Mr. President, Gaza will haunt the conscience of the world long after this genocide stops. And stop it must, and it must now. We have spoken too many times, and our people are still being murdered every single day. So let me just say the following today. 2 million people have lost loved ones in the last 7 months, lost family members, lost friends, lost limbs, lost their homes, lost their communities, schools, universities, hospitals were destroyed. People are being starved to death. Refugees from the 1948 Nakba, who were waiting for the day the Nakba ends, are forced to live it with even more cruelty and devastation than 76 years ago. This is happening despite the decisions of every relevant international body on earth and calls by nearly every state in the world. There is only one conclusion to draw from these facts. Israel is deliberately destroying life in Gaza, and it will not be deterred by the rules of international law or positions adopted by states or international bodies. It will only be deterred by resolute action, holding it accountable for its decisions and forcing it to change course. Mr. President, the whole world opposed Israel's assault on Rafah, and yet Israel is proceeding. All of you opposed going into Rafah, yet the Israeli government is proceeding. Israel has pushed an entire population to the southern border of Gaza, to Rafah, through mass killing and destruction. People were forcibly displaced time and time again in horrific conditions. They are being displaced yet again by the hundreds of thousands with nowhere to go, nowhere to stay, nowhere to be safe, dragging what remains of their lives, confronted with death all around them, abandoned to this terrifying fate. In parallel, Israel has escalated its massacres in northern Gaza, notably in Jabalia. Israel, instead of opening crossing points for humanitarian aid, decided to seize by force the Rafah crossing while providing cover for the destruction of humanitarian aid by Israeli settlers and extremists in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. At a time where the international community was calling to flood Gaza with humanitarian aid to stop the famine underway and the human suffering resulting from this horrible siege, Israel imposed on our people a drought of humanitarian aid, a deliberate and undeniable use of starvation as a method of war. Israel must pull out from the Rafah crossing, open all crossings, and allow the unimpeded flow of humanitarian aid, and must withdraw its occupation forces from the Gaza Strip. Mr. President, Israel has determined who its enemies are: the Palestinian people as a whole, the United Nations, its agencies, the Secretary General, the Security Council, the General Assembly, the Human Rights Council, the world courts, the NGOs, Palestinian, Israeli, and international, and every state on earth that dares to denounce its crimes. Mr. President, with what audacity does Israel kill, maim, forcibly displace, arbitrarily arrest, torture, starve an entire civilian population? With what audacity does it occupy and annex our land? With what audacity does it give itself a right of life and death over every single Palestinian, and proclaims it has a right to veto our national rights, including to self-determination and to the independence of our state? With the audacity, or should I say arrogance, that impunity provides. We speak often in this chamber of the international law-based order. Israel is asking you to destroy the international-based order with your own hands so it can continue killing our people and annexing our land in full impunity. It will not listen to reason or to your protests, to your calls or your demands. You have tried every other way possible, and Israel has gone further and further in its breach of the UN Charter and the law. It expects everything from you: blind political support, weapons, full economic and trade privileges, and rejects any commitment in return to abide by the rule of international law, to end its occupation, and to advance just and lasting peace. Israel insults and humiliates its closest friends and allies. It expects them to align their policies with its crimes, to sacrifice everything they stand for, to stand not by Israel but by Israelis' colonial, supremacist, and inhumane policies towards the Palestinian people. This is becoming increasingly impossible for many of them. And we believe that very soon we will reach a tipping point where countries will stand up to defend freedom, justice, and peace, and there are important signs already to that effect. Indeed, peoples around the world are making themselves heard. Governments are more and more outspoken. But please remember that every day without reaching that tipping point means lives destroyed. I urge you to use every tool at your disposal to stop the massacres as Security Council and as states. Let me repeat. I urge you to use every tool at your disposal, and you have many of them, to stop the massacres as Security Council and as states. A whole nation is fighting for its survival before your very eyes. The future of our region, the future of our world, the future of this international law-based order will depend on what you do next. Thank you, Mr. President.